Well, hey, everybody, I'm so glad that you could join us today. We're doing some online resources to try and help people as we adjust to a new way of doing life. I am going to try not to talk too much and let my friend Bryan do most of the talking, but I tell people I am a recovering preacher. So I go on, and usually in 3 points, and it rhymes and something like that. But I also know, having been a pastor, that one gift I did not have was sitting still. I'm actually pretty horrible at it. I always wanted to go get things done, and I loved the multitasking of running. I even liked, okay, I'll go to the hospital and then I'll go to a meeting, and man, I can't imagine what it's like to be a pastor having to sit still right now. And on top of that, I remember the Sunday after 9/11 and how packed our church was. I mean, it's unlike anything I've ever seen. And then 2 years later, I was a brand new pastor in Houston, and the space shuttle blew up on a Saturday coming back into Earth. And it was lost on me. I totally dropped the ball and didn't realize how near and dear that whole endeavor, no pun intended, was to our city. And we had packed houses of worship. And so I can't imagine. I mean, there's more spiritual hunger right now around the world than ever before, and we can't get together. And I don't know that there's any roadmap for that. There's never been a time in our life when churches just couldn't gather for worship for however many weeks it's going to be. So while we're all learning this new norm that I do believe will be a temporary norm, we want to try and help you get through that. We've spent a long time doing search and helping churches find pastors, and helping schools find headmasters and principals, and helping nonprofits find CEOs. And in all my interviewing, I've really come to believe face-to-face is the best. We're told Jesus came in the fullness of time. If now were the fullness of time, he would have just Skyped it in and saved the trouble. But he didn't, because face-to-face is the best. But we don't have that option right now. So what do? Well, for over a decade, we've been playing with online platforms, and we've been doing some of our interviews face-to-face. We probably got north of 10,000 interviews for searches we're doing face-to-face. We've got a lot of reps in. We've tried a lot of different platforms. I wrote an article. We'll send out the link about that. But right when we started our company, I met a guy named Bryan Miles, who you can see on the screen. I don't know if you remember Bryan, but we were at Sean Lovejoy's church. That I think you guys might have even had something to do with building it or something. That you were working in a whole different industry, and then I tried this new thing, and then you and Shannon Miles decided to start Belay. Mm-hmm. And some people may not know Belay, so why don't you just quick intro of your company and your story?
Yeah, you bet. So Belay started in 2010, late 2010. We offered virtual assistant services, and about a month later, we offered virtual bookkeeping and payroll services to churches, predominantly when we first got started. And then over the course of meeting people that liked our services in other industries, we've grown outside of church world, but we still represent a lot of churches around the U.S. with our services. So we do virtual assistant services, virtual bookkeeping and payroll, and also webmaster or website support services too for people in a fractional capacity. And our heart right now, especially, is with the church. It's an interesting time. The church wasn't necessarily a building; it was a group of people. Based on everything I know, when Jesus references the church, it meant a gathering of people, and we're just finding ourselves doing a lot of that online right now.
Yeah. And I always like talking to Bryan. It's just super fun, and I'd rather talk to Shannon, frankly, but she wasn't available. So Bryan was our next best. But people say the same thing about Adrian with me, Bryan. So don't feel bad.
Oh no, I'm used to it. It's all good.
I tell people when they meet Adrian, I say it's the best search I've ever done. But so, okay, Craig Rochelle and several others have done an amazing job of creating platforms for online church. And I met Craig a few years before I met you. He was just starting this new thing, and they had to do multiple locations, and then they had to pop in a video because his wife had a kid that Saturday night. And since then, I think he's told, I think I saw that last weekend they had on the church online platform, not just Life Church, but churches using that platform, something just short of 5 million people logged in for a worship service, and 18,000 salvations, something like that. So it's amazing what can happen in this online church. I think we're all going to want to be together at the end of the day. Nothing will permanently replace that.
Right.
The first thing God said is bad is he said, it's not good. After he said the light is good and this is good and this is good, he said, it's not good that man be left alone. Yeah. So virtual is having to fill in the gap, and Sunday morning's awesome. But hey, if it's going to be 8 weeks and maybe even a little longer, who knows, you're going to have a board meeting, and you're going to have a staff meeting, and you're going to have to do things other than just get together for worship online. So I particularly was interested in having Bryan on, because Bryan says, well, we offer virtual executive assistants or administrative assistants online, but you've got a team running that company. How many people are in your, whatever you'd call your central staff?
We're close to 100 full-time people on our team that kind of run what's known as Belay, and then we've got over 1,000 that actually do the work of working with our clients, and they're all based in the US. They all work from home. We don't have an office. We never have. So we've actually figured out how to kind of not only grow an organization that serves people's needs, but also really work together and create a vibrant culture too. So while I know this is new for many, it's not new for us, and we've been doing this for a while now. So we've got some, I consider some best practices for how we've helped organizations grow, and so we'd love to share this. We have resources that we can give you in the show notes too. Plenty of resources to our website with all sorts of free stuff that's out there for churches and church leaders to use and leverage.
That's awesome. So let's walk through a few components of running a church, and tell me what you've learned over the years, like your staff meeting. I doubt very seriously there are people that have a staff meeting of 100. So you won't have different screens you're going to have to stare at, but staffs are going to be 2 people, 3 people, maybe sure. 10, 50, something like that. So let's start with platforms, because I think I've tried all of them and have found that none of them are great, but the one that's least bad and my preferred platform is Zoom. But I don't know, is that the case for you guys? I mean, do you have a recommendation?
Yeah, we've tried them all too, and Zoom has been the best one for us. We have an enterprise account because the amount of people that we have as users using it, but churches can leverage their free version of it, and I think that it would go really well for them. I mean, there's Google Hangout, many people are doing that. Also Skype is another one too for video conferencing, but for us, Zoom has been, one, easy, but 2, it just seems to work most times. It won't break when you need to have communication.
Well, they're one of the few stocks that I wish I'd have bought.
Yeah.
One of our distant relative, a relative of an in-law, 88 years old in January, moved a bunch of her investments from index funds to Clorox. What a genius. I mean, brilliant. Exactly. But Zoom's done the same thing. And the interesting thing is he did his entire roadshow with investors, except for one meeting he did in San Francisco. All of his investor meetings were over Zoom. So pretty cool.
Yeah, he's practicing what he preaches.
That's right. So whatever platform you pick, do you need to have a hardline connection? Will Wi-Fi work, or what connection speeds should people be looking at?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Corporate bandwidth has obviously gone way down, but residential bandwidth has gone way up. And we've been in certain markets, like in rural markets, we've found that a few of our folks are actually suffering a little bit because the bandwidth is being pulled down a little bit. So that's something to consider. Obviously, you need a fast machine, and a good webcam, good microphone or speaker. But high-speed connection, really, you're going to need that right now. Forget dial-up. Although I've even seen in certain markets around the U.S., the 5G is when they tether that to their machines, it's working really well. 5G is really really making things easier for people to be, you know, around their house when they're maybe not tethered in, you know, directly to a hard line.
That's good. That's good. And yes, I have like real dress pants on. I'm not wearing
Yeah.
shorts, you know.
I'm not in my
Um,
boxers, see? That,
exactly. But I mean, there is something to be said for whatever your workplace culture is. I think it ought to be reflected when you're online. That's just me. Maybe I'm old
I
school, but
agree. I mean, it's important that you show up for work, you know, and you come prepared. And you know, there's so many things to talk about around that, but one of them in particular is beyond just showing up for work and being ready is, you know, do your daily routine, you know, do your, you know, prayer, you know, do your journaling, work out before, you know, you get going, like whatever that routine is, don't stop it. I've even found that I've had to remind myself, I work from home all the time, but with this hysteria and everything that's going on, I've had to remind myself, nope, get up, do your routine, go work out, journal, take a walk on the property, like just do your routine. And I'm used to this, but it's so easy to get stuck looking at, you know, CNBC or, you know, whatever news outlet you're looking at. So, you know, come ready for work, be prepared for work, um, dress in the way that it's expected, you know, for you to be there. But yeah, bathrobes and boxers, I really wouldn't encourage that currently.
and I'd say so we have remote policy for working. So we've been for a long time requiring everybody to move to Houston and come to our office because of the nature of our work.
Sure.
But and partly because I'm a terrible manager, and the way you learn is by just being around me. And if you're not here, you can't. But now we actually have a really good team, and our lead team's built systems. So we've been expanding and opening offices, and that's created a remote work policy.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate drawing up policies. But do you guys have like, okay, here are the guidelines? I mean, here's our policy for what would be a few things you've learned
Yeah.
either the hard way or not that you might want to tell your church staff or school
Well,
staff?
what I would encourage, first off, is start with grace and an abundance of it. Like right now, if you know, think about this, everybody's literally now working from home, and so are kids. You know, so not only are kids trying to log into their school district's site for learning, there also might be some fear. They might be scared right now, and so they may be asking you a question in the middle of a call like this, or maybe there's a dog barking, or you see a cat walking around in the background. Like I would just encourage you guys to give each other a bunch of grace. You know, there's also, you know, we have a lot of our team that their spouses are now working from home for the first time, and they're bumping into each other in their little 100 square foot office. You know, so there's just a reason to give a lot of grace right now in terms of this. But I would say, you know, the most powerful thing that anybody can do right now is to, you know, and it's true in a church as it is in any work environment, is when somebody is late to getting to something or whatever, is just to fill the gap of trust as much as humanly possible right now, because people have a lot on their minds that's not necessarily work related, and productivity may suffer a little bit, but the more you can extend trust and grace, that will make this virtual thing work. And you know, one day we'll all escape and we'll get back to our offices or whatever. But the truth is that grace and trust have got to be a big part of what's going on right now when you're allowing your teams, or you're asking your teams to go home and work.
That's awesome. And I'd say remembering, you know, I don't think unless you're just going to be remote forever, I don't think now's the time for permanent policies. But
Yeah,
like, you know, guidelines on you know, work when you want to, but let's all agree that we're all going to be online. I think
that's
it's
right.
in our policy. You can start your day at 7 and end it whenever. You can start at 8 or 9 or 10 and end whenever, but everybody needs to be online at the same time from say 10 to 3, you know,
Yeah,
with lunch in the middle. So, you know, you can get in touch with other people. It's not just, well, when I get up or when I quit watching the freaking stock market ticker or what, you know, but there is still a
yeah,
semblance of office hours. Have you guys found that to be
for
something that?
sure. Yeah, I would definitely encourage you to talk to your whoever you report to make sure that you're clear on the expectations around that right now, because it's you know, there may, like, I agree, permanent forever policies are kind of a thing that I would not encourage you to do right now, you know, but find out from your team or from your boss, hey, what's the expectation for me? What's the results you're actually looking for from me right now so that I can hit those? Um, And, this is one thing that we say all the time, even before this thing ever got underway, the coronavirus is, have set work hours as best you can. But also make sure like I said, you're getting up, taking a walk, you're still having lunch, you're still doing things, but have set hours and just make sure you cleared that with your manager through this time. Because the worst thing you can do is be wondering if you're hitting the mark as an employee or on staff at a church, and there's probably some variables that, you're going to be asked to do in this next season of time that you wouldn't normally do. So the more you can ask for clarity around that, I'd really encourage it, especially the hours you're working and what's expected of you.
So let's talk about meetings. I mean, a lot of meetings for church staffs are going away for the time being, but there are still meetings like worship planning meetings. How are we going to visit with the sick? That's a really interesting question.
No kidding.
What have you found? I'd love to hear some of the times that most of my learning comes from when I mess something up and say, ooh, let's not do that again.
Stupid tax. Yeah.
Right. So save us some stupid tax. Tell us what you learned about meeting with your team online.
Yeah, well, I would definitely encourage teams to still meet. Zoom especially has the capability of doing hundreds of people at one time. If, for example, at Belay, we have a weekly stand-up meeting on Monday mornings at 10 a.m. Our team of, close to 100, they're there. They're ready to go. They're on video. But in this instance, because there's so many of them, they're all on mute, except for the person talking.
Well, let's call time out there. Talk to me about mute or not mute.
So in an environment like that where you've got so many, it just becomes a distraction. They hear noise other than the speaker. So definitely put, like, when you're above 12 people in general, you want to just kind of say, hey, get everybody to go on mute. And those are generally more information, one way, here's information coming to you types of conversation versus it being a dialogue. But anything under 12, we want, and it's a policy inside our business at Belay, is everybody's off mute, because mute is the devil for collaboration and communication. So we want everybody off mute, and they have to be present on their screen. They cannot, not share their screen or their video. And because think about this, because imagine if you were out, you're having a cup of coffee, and some Starbucks somewhere, and I go, hey, William, hang on just a second, and then I just get a big sheet and I just put it up between the two of us. And I go, okay, go ahead, I'm ready. Like, nowhere in our face-to-face rule is that okay, but for some reason we think it's okay online, and it's not, because it shows you're present. And especially in calls with under 12 people, you've got to be present. You're there, you're working, or you're representing your company. And really the mute button, it just, like I said, it kills the ability to kind of have a good, jump in dialogue, excuse me, in that process. So I would really, really encourage you guys to, anything under 12, stay off mute, show yourself. And then on larger, big team meetings that are past 12 people, is, have a person leading the conversation or the agenda and everybody else on mute, but all on video. It's like a giant, big Brady Bunch.
That's awesome. One thing I learned the hard way when we're meeting from home is, okay, so the meeting's an hour or whatever the time frame is. I really do need to. So we have 7 kids, and Lord knows how many devices on our Verizon plan. We have the Mac Daddy connection speed. Yeah. But I've kind of had to tell them, no Fortnite, no streaming friends, no during the meeting. I need the bandwidth. For this hour, I'm on the internet, and everybody else needs to go find something else to do. And right. I don't know. I think in most homes that's going to be important. I read last night that Fortnite is actually crashing right now.
That doesn't surprise me.
They're not built for the load usage that's happening right now. So
that's actually a really good point, is that bandwidth for web calls especially does require a lot on the internet speeds at your houses. So that is a good thing, is, hey, mom and dad have a work call, it's time to read a book, or occupy yourself outside of technology, because we've had the same thing happen. We've been on web calls, and our web connection is just buckled at its knees, and come to find out our son was playing Fortnite or some other game.
So how do you, I've heard you use this phrase before, but when you're trying to get consensus, or you're trying to, a lot of times if I'm in a meeting and we're discussing how we're going to do something, I can read the room,
Sure.
by looking around and watching body language. You don't really get that in a Zoom call. So you've told me about your fist to five.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's basically it's worked out so well for us. So let's say that our leadership team is together and we're debating a topic, or we're trying to get a sentiment on, hey, how are people feeling about this or that or whatever. Is we'll just say, hey, time out. Let's just go ahead and get the barometer of where people are feeling about this or thinking about this right now. And we say it's a fist to five, and a fist is really 0, or not going to happen, or I hate this idea. And 5 is like, this is awesome. Let's do this. Or I love this idea. So we'll go, okay, on it. We'll say, okay, here's the thing that we're going to do the fist to 5 on. So we'll state what that thing is, and then we'll go 1, 2, 3. And after we count down from 1 to 3, everybody will show a number from 0 to 4 or 5, whatever the number is, and then they just hold it up. And then you look around the Zoom and you just realize where, okay, there's 3 people there that are in alignment. These people, we need to have more debate about this. And if everybody's all 5s, then it's good to go. Or you have somebody become the contrarian and say, hey, let's beat this up a little bit more, and I'll take.
Well, does the contrarian vote with their hand like this so they can vote with the one that gets the point across?
Yeah, that's backwards. But it's the one where we've always felt like, even though we all agree, like we should always beat something up just to make sure it's the best right idea for belay. So we have a conflict norm in our business that we teach on called welcome the contrarian, and that's for a different day. But we build conflict norms into our business because you need good conflict and healthy conflict in order to advance your business well. But beyond that, though, it could be like, hey, fist to 5, how's everybody feeling today? Coming to work. And you may see guys with 5s, and you see 1s and 0s. You can kind of know, oh, I need to touch base with her, or I need to touch base with him. It's just a really easy way of gaining consensus, or just kind of feeling sentiment out on a web call.
We're really new to everyone being remote. In fact, we just today, I think, is the first day that everyone is remote for however long we need to do that to try and help solve this thing. And the times that we've done remote work, I think, now maybe I'm just not good at it, you can help me, but I feel like it almost requires more direct supervision than when you're in an office together. Is that a fair statement? And if it is, how do you do supervision and accountability and check-in when you don't see the person all day long?
I think it's a difference in leadership. I don't believe this assumption that if I can't see you, I can't control you. I actually believe that if I can't see you, I trust you. And to trust you means I'm going to give you a result that's expected, and then I'm going to see you produce the result. And so you can come to me for help on how to get to the result, but just because I can't see you doesn't mean I don't trust you. And there's a lot of people that like to be in offices because they want to feel like they're in control. And that's just something that people naturally battle with. I've seen this across all different sorts of industries. But I would say that, the better thing for a leader to do right now in this season of time, like I said, is 1, extend trust, but 2, ask them for the result. Say, this is the result I'm looking for from you right now. And allowing them the freedom to kind of do the things necessary to get to the result. Like, it's easier for me right now to go to somebody and say, hey, here's the thing I need from you, and this is why this is important to our organization in this crazy season that we're going through, and put as much clarity around the result as possible, versus telling them, here's the 88 things I need you to do over the next 2 days in order to equal that result, because they may get it done in 5 tasks versus 88, and it'll be the perfect result that we're looking for. So right now, I really am encouraging leaders, especially in leading from home, that they should really create a result and not give tasks to do, but really say, this is the result I need from you. And here's the cool thing about that. When that's done right, that speaks all sorts of good things to the heart of your team. And it creates a really unique camaraderie during this season of time where we're all kind of like, gosh, how are we going to do this together?
That's great. That's great. So regular office hours, how you do meetings, sometimes you have to have a board meeting. our work in search started as a brand new idea to churches when I started 12 years ago doing this, right? Which, by the way, I think you started as well, but I
Yeah.
started in the fall of '08, which was the stupidest time in the world to quit your job and start it. So if you're worried about economics, God can make things happen even in a really, really bad time. And giving historically does better in a recession than not. I read the closest the country has ever gotten to full tithing was during the height of the Depression. So yeah, it's very interesting. There's a lot of good resources out there. But as you're concerned about running your staff, part of the joy of ministry when I was there was that you were with people. There was a culture. It was there's something about doing this together. And I'm convinced, I still remember every staff member I worked with the day of 9/11. I mean, I was talking to our COO was actually in the air flying into Dulles when all that went down and the plane turned around. He still talks to the people that were, with him that day. I think there's a chance for teams to bond more now and remember when we had to do this, that, or the other. So little sidebar, a few years ago, our company won an award from Entrepreneur Magazine, top company culture for small businesses in the galaxy. I think they didn't say country. I don't know, but it was something, tremendous.
It's a huge award.
Exactly. Fast forward, 2 years later, I guess you guys were the winner for the same thing.
Yeah.
That's an entirely different proposition. And it makes me want to say, Bryan, what have you learned both in best practice and in, we messed that up, about how church staffs and school staffs and nonprofit staffs can build culture right now when they're all virtual, so that when this is all over, we can look back and say, I do remember. It wasn't just see you when this is over. How do you build a culture like this?
Well, first off, we believe this premise that culture isn't an office or a physical location. Culture is basically rallied around shared vision. And I can't think of a better time right now to galvanize the vision of a nonprofit or a church or a school than right now. And really, push hard on where the vision is, where you're headed, because that's what people are actually connected to from a culture standpoint. It has nothing to do with the facility. It doesn't matter if you have a ping pong table or a great boardroom. It actually has to do with what the leaders are saying. This is where we're headed. And then the culture supports that and props that up with the people that are part of it. So we've been able to do that virtually, for almost 10 years now. And I think it's incumbent on leaders now more than ever to say, hey, here's our North Star. This thing, this virus, or whatever else the world wants to throw at us, this doesn't stop us from where we're headed as an organization. And that's what their hearts knit to on a team or a staff. Their hearts are knitted to something that's meaningful like that. I think it's very much the leader's responsibility right now to communicate that. And that actually equals the culture of an organization. I can't think of a better thing to be aligned to than, when a leader says, hey, follow me, this is where we're headed. And it's got great clarity around that.
So let's think practically and tactically about that. Like, one of the things that happened at our office, I'm remote right now. We were supposed to be in Europe this week. We kind of rewired that. But the last day before we went all remote, one or two guys were going to pray, and word leaked out, and before you know it, they were breaking every rule about distance, because everyone was huddled in this one office praying for our clients, praying for candidates, praying for the people who are unemployed and looking for a job right now. I mean, just cover the whole thing in prayer. And I thought, we have got to replicate this virtually. So do you guys do anything like that? Or, okay.
Yeah, we have prayer. We pray before our meetings, like our stand-up meetings that happen on Monday mornings. We offer prayer at the beginning, at the end of it. There are times where we'll have optional Bible studies that are available online with our team. Now, we're a for-profit organization. We're not a church. We're cautious and cognizant of that, but we've created opportunities around that for people. If they're searching for something, they can, be part of it in an optional capacity. But yeah, there's, I think right now you and I could have the most meaningful prayer about our nation, and it would be felt, and it would be no different than if I were right there with you. And just think that God is in the midst of us as people, and he's even in the midst of this right now, in a virtual capacity too. And I actually am really grateful that technology has got to this point so that we can still have meaningful human connection. Imagine how bad this would suck if we didn't have the ability to leverage technology right now, and everybody was working from home. I mean, that would just be
Well, I don't
really
know.
hard.
Then I wouldn't. Wolf Blitzer wouldn't be able to reach me every minute of the day. Then,
Yeah,
too. So
true. Very true. The fear mongering would be much less too.
yeah. Well, so other things that you think about, like staffs that are. I mean, the break room is such a cohesion for our team, and I know,
Yeah,
like at a school, the teacher lounge is like where it
sure.
all happens, right? So, what do you guys do, like in a non-work, to build your virtual culture?
Well, I mean, we do have times where we'll do like coffee talk on a say like a Thursday, and we'll have a topic, on for example, one that was recently happened inside Belay. It was 10 o'clock in the morning Eastern. Bring your coffee, and then basically the topic was how are you going to basically with your kids at home, how are you going to make sure they're occupied, and let's share ideas around that. And so we're finding ways to connect with each other, online, and share our ideas. Or, in the past we've done, like in the afternoons, we'll have everybody get together, and we'll celebrate an award that we won. Where there's so many other ways to kind of do that. And then from a personal or one-on-one basis is, hey, William, I've had a pretty stressful day. Let's jump on at 4:30 if you're clear. And I just need to kind of share with you some stuff that I've had to deal with today personally, and that's really great right now for churches that have HR, where there's kind of a safe harbor or like a neutral Switzerland. There's some people really stressed out right now, on church staffs and in organizations right now. So having these one-on-one connections where people can still feel connected, and be able to verbalize it and be able to see kind of the emotion in their face. I think it's important that churches have a relief valve, for things like that right now.
Yeah, I'm going to risk offending some of our church clients. We serve the whole church, and that, man, we got people. I think we have clients that probably are trying to figure out if their snakes carry COVID. Uh, and then we've got the oldest Presbyterian church in wherever, so like we're all over the board. So pardon the offense for those that this offends theology, but I'm reading about the virtual happy hour right now. I actually read an article about the companies that at 5 o'clock are celebrating with a quarantini.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we do. Yeah.
okay.
We tell people, hey, we're having a virtual happy hour. Bring your best beverage, the one you want, and we'll cheer something, or we'll have a meaningful conversation around this topic. And it's actually really refreshing. And here's something that's actually interesting that I've noticed over doing this for almost 10 years. It's different. Like if I come into your cubicle or in your office at work, I'm getting to know like the work William, right? But when I can see and peer into like your home, and I get just a glimpse of your house, or where you might be if you're traveling, I get to know you on a little bit different level. I might see that kid run by or that cat go by, and it kind of creates a little bit more of an authentic impression on the folks that you work with, because you get a small glimpse into their home,
That's
and
good.
you don't otherwise see that. And so it's a kind of a unique time for you to observe, and see how people are at home. It's just a unique thing that we've noticed and picked up on. You learn a
That's
lot
really
about
cool.
somebody by that. We do it in the interview process.
Hey, man, I in that article I mentioned, I gave the tame version in the article I've written, but I can't tell you, when you interview a person virtually, I'm looking at your bookshelf and
Yeah,
what's over there, and
yeah,
why do you still have a Heather Thomas poster from 1980? Like you need to be careful what you're broadcasting
yeah,
when you do that. In fact, with us, because we're doing searches remotely, for us, we've decided that consistency is paramount. So we actually have like sent backgrounds home with everybody,
yeah.
so that they have
That's
a
smart.
unified, you have a consistent experience with us no matter where it is. I'm not home to go pick mine up yet, so you're having to look at the door, but there's something about consistency that matters. So
That's
now,
smart. That's a really good idea, actually. with the
Yeah.
background that's consistent.
Yeah, it's a little, with print on demand anymore, you could do one with First Baptist Church this, and that
Right.
way I foresee pastors doing a lot of reaching out to their congregations over this form and sending it out in an email link. How cool would it be if it could be, maybe even from the church? I mean, there's no reason, if you're living in a parsonage next to the church, you could go and give people just a little bit of a feeling of a consistent experience in a time where consistency is just not happening at all.
Right.
So yeah.
That's cool.
What let's shift to a little harder topic, because this is going to happen.
Yeah.
People are going to have to cut overhead.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's say you're in a can't go anywhere situation, but you really have to fire somebody.
Yeah.
How do you fire somebody virtually? I'm sure you guys have had to do that over the years.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not easy. I mean, it's, as best you can, you want to do those face to face. And we do that with our virtual company. The lion's share of our corporate team is still in Metro Atlanta. And we, unless there's just some emergency that has to happen with that, the last thing you want to do is let someone go over this type of experience. I've had to do it. It's unpleasant. There's a couple things I would say is, be honest straight out of the gate. Like, hey, we're about to have a hard conversation, and get after it. Don't make these long conversations if it has to happen. And, be prepared. I mean, I know this is probably very obvious, but make sure that there's a really clear plan for how you're going to communicate what they're getting on the other side of this decision, and being ready to communicate that. But unfortunately, because a lot of people are being asked to work from home, some of this stuff is going to happen. I don't want to be negative about it, but the truth is it's going to be tough. And as best you can, be who you are. Don't be a robot, be full of grace and kind as best you can as you go through something like this, because the emotion that maybe come back at you will be hard to stomach at times.
Yeah. And I'd throw in there, I don't think people, we do the hiring and we end up on the firing end of things sometimes too.
Sure.
And you talk about it's a need for grace right now. There'll be a need for grace. So if you're small business, if you're school, if you're church, if you're like, we're going to have to trim back overhead, don't forget that when you let someone go, you really do, you don't legally owe them severance, but the right thing to do is to try and make them whole. So make the changes before you have to make the changes, because you may not be able to afford to, you wait too long, it may be a lose-lose.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, it's right now, I'm seeing, at least across a few different industries or verticals, that people are just kind of not making a decision right now. And there will be a time where churches will, or in nonprofit organizations, are going to have to make some calls like this. So, I just pray for the best wisdom for you possible, because we're navigating that in our business too, thinking through, how do we appropriately cut back without losing people? What are our reserves like? All the things that you should be asking in prudence right now. So I know that that's a conversation that's happening, around the U.S. and really globally right now.
Yeah. Any tips that you've learned for hiring virtually?
Yeah, I mean, there's one is your background. It's do they have a meaningful home office? It's not the same place where you write your checks once a month. Do you actually have a dedicated office space? And can you share that to make sure they know that you have a dedicated workspace? Do you have actual hours set aside that are child free or distraction free? That's an important thing. We contract with several people that they are kids to aging parents. And so they have to take care of their moms and dads right now while they're working. They're really great, wonderfully qualified people, but they need to be distraction free to work and represent us and our clients. So we have to say, hey, can you talk us through what that looks like on your day-to-day basis? Because, life has to happen too. Obviously you got to have a good machine, a good computer, high-speed connection, webcam, good microphone. Those are obviously very important. And then we're looking for soft skills too. Like your ability to be responsive, your communication skills, and how do you think critically? Responsiveness, you would think, is not a big deal, but if William sends me something and say William's my boss, and I see that and I go, okay, cool, I'll get to that. But I don't respond to him in a virtual capacity. And I go, hey, William, I'll get to this. I'll have it to you by 3:00 today. If in a virtual world, if I don't say anything to him, he's left with the fill in the blank with whatever thing he needs to assume. So it's important that, especially now from a virtual standpoint, we are all doing our best to over communicate, because when we don't over communicate, we leave a lot of blanks that people fill in maybe with the right answer. And so over communication is a biggie right now for people to do.
That's great. So you've been at this over 10 years now. Like, surely there's some things you've learned through Stupid Tax. Tell us a funny or two that you're like, man, I can't believe we did that, but we did, and now we don't do that anymore.
Well, one of them has not necessarily anything to do with staffing, but we made a terrible mistake one time of posting an image on a blog and not giving credit to the image, and then I got a really nice lawsuit from a very large company that scared me to death. So we figured out that we will now give credit as much as humanly possible on our images, or we won't post them. So that's a fun Stupid Tax that I would say on the staffing or hiring side from a virtual standpoint, we've made the mistake of not expecting everybody to be on video before, and we've actually realized that people that refuse to show their screen at certain times, it's because they're really actually not even there.
Oh, wow.
So we've found that out the hard way a couple of times, that when they don't share the screen, that just means that they literally acted like they were there and they were not even in the room and listening. And so that wasn't cool. So that's part of the reason why you're all visible, is so you're not out doing the laundry or not caring about what's going on in our business.
And it's not that bad anymore. I mean, you say, well, then they might see me when I pick my nose. Well, you're not supposed to do that anymore either.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
so we're all, let's do this together, right? Yeah. Wow. So, I would say one thing that I've learned, where pastors particularly, when you're holding a virtual meeting, especially your board meeting or whatever, I would go ahead and assume that you are working with novices. Yeah. And like, if the meeting's supposed to start at 7, just go ahead and have it in your head that this is not going to start till 7:15, because is this thing on? Is it, like that? Right. And then
I can't hear you.
Right. Are you on mute? And how do I, and what do I, and we found, we've developed a little cheat sheet we send to older churches. And I don't mean older, like age older. I just mean like more established churches aren't used to it. So here's a little cheat sheet for how we're going to do this meeting. Make sure you do this, wear this kind of headphone or don't. It's not rocket science, and we can send it out to people. I'm sure you've got a similar sort of thing. Yeah. Just, and then have some grace with your people, because they're not, this is a new thing. And for a lot of people, they're like, so we're not going to write this down on a legal pad, so we're asking a lot of people. We're asking a lot of people to move at warp speed in a time when everybody's already strung really tight.
Yeah. So, well, and the other thing too is be mindful of your background. I know we talked on this before, but one of our more funny stories is we had a client that kicked off with this, and he was traveling with his wife, and he didn't realize that his wife was actually showering in the background on the kickoff call. And our client success consultant had to say, time out. Do you see that? We're going to hang up now and we're going to reset this. So please be mindful of your backgrounds. There's more going on back there than you might think.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Bryan, we may be talking to you again. We're going to be sending out resources. Any word you'd give to leaders, it might be a church or a school, but whoever's watching this likely is spending their career trying to move Jesus' name forward. Yeah. Any last words you'd give us about this virtual mission that we're on right now?
We definitely are on one right now. I would just say, in a season like right now, I've heard my pastor's Andy Stanley, and I've heard him say this many, many times, but do for one what you wish you could do for many.
Mm.
And that is so true right now. As we look at our teams, you may not be able to get to everybody on your team because of maybe the size of your team, or but be present with them as much as you can be online. Like, keep the distractions to a minimum so that you can really be present when you're talking to them on a web call or whatever you're doing, and not have CNBC off to the side. Like, give them the gift of presence. And you can do that very much online right now with mute and or being off mute and then being on video. But our teams need us now as leaders more than ever before. And so I would just encourage you guys to make sure that you're communicating the North Star of your organization.
Yes.
And remind people that this is temporary. This is not for forever.
Totally.
And, we'll get through this collectively, but people are hungering right now. And I can't think of a time, well, at least in my life, where I've ever seen the global workforce actually buckle in some ways. This is like a workplace apocalypse in some ways. And I would just say that there's a season coming where you'll have lessons learned from this, and there might be some things you can take and allow people to work more remote or smarter for the sake of productivity in your organization. But mostly I'd just say, me personally, I'm here to cheer you on. I know this is not an easy season, but if we can be a resource to you, we'd certainly love to try.
I am an evangelist for you, man. You helped me out. We got in a staffing pinch a few years back, and it just had to do virtual for a little bit, and can't speak highly enough of the organization. I will say, I'll latch on to one thing that you said. This is temporary. And smart, vision. The prophets in the Old Testament may or may not have been looking 500 or 600 years down the road when they made their prophecies, but they for sure were making predictions about the near-term future that no one else was thinking about yet. And so often your vision, whether you're leading a school or a church, it's about seeing a little farther ahead. It doesn't have to be too much farther ahead, but it's kind of like my sister-in-law, Emily, whose grandmother, who's 88, moved stock over to Clorox back in January. And that was back when we were first hearing about the things going down in China. And that's just thinking clearly, like thinking past the right now to the what's next. And I'll tell you, this is going to sound salesy, but it just is. I had a client yesterday start a search, and you're like, William, who in the world's hiring right now? And are you ready to do this? And they said, you know what, William, it's going to take a little while to get a search done, and it's going to take a little while for this to pass. But when this passes, we're going to be busier than we've ever been, and I better not be shorthanded then. So I don't know if it's a staffing thing you need to think through, like, should we go ahead and get going so that when student ministry can crank back up, we've got that, or when we crank back up, the floodgates are going to open. And I know that sounds like the president talking about the economy, but you just look back historically at what happens at church during crisis. People go to church. So I would just encourage everybody there to, trust that God's in this, he's using it, and about to give you a season of a flood of ministry, and do whatever you can with this sit still time that we have now to get ready for it. And if there's a way either of us, Bryan or Vanderbloemen, can help you, just give us a buzz. We're praying for you, and we're going to keep bringing you resources like this and interviewing friends who have more experience in this virtual thing than we do. Bryan, thank you so much for making time on a short notice.
Thank you. Happy to be here.